So thank you for tuning in to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast. This is part 2 of our interview with Right Worshipful Brother Clint Brown, the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Washington. We will continue right where we left off with Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth, Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung, and myself, Matt Appel, and of course, Right Worshipful Brother Clint Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
How did you decide that you wanted to become Grand Secretary? Well, you just wake up one morning and go, oh, I'm going to put my name on the ballot.
He realized where the real power was.
Exactly.
The Secretary's office.
So I had been a secretary of my lodge and had also been district deputy, and I'd kind of, I guess, come into Grand Lodge sort of kicking and screaming, saying, I'm not sure that this is for me, but I became involved on the building Grand Lodge Building Association. I became involved on several other committees, including research and education, the trial committee. I was a deputy, and I was asked if one day if I would come up here and work at Grand Lodge. Starting out just one day a week, I was assistant to the Grand Secretary. And over time, I saw a lot of things that worked well, and I saw a lot of things that I thought could be changed and help to improve the flow of work and everything. I was assistant Grand Secretary under Most Worshipful Brother Sam, and he had his heart attack. And when he came back, he and I sat down and said, what happens? I mean, we kind of, it was a shock to me because, I immediately got a call from several people and said, now you realize that while Sam's out, you're the Grand Secretary, right? I was like, oh yeah, I guess that pesky little code thing. Yeah. If the Grand Secretary is unavailable, and then the Assistant Grand Secretary. But when he came back, he and I sat down and talked about, well, what happens if there is no one available? What happens if he was not able to continue on and no one was available or had made themselves available under the code? And the answer was, well, then it would kind of go to the floor. So the decision was made, because this is not just a job that lends itself to just coming in off the street and plopping yourself down in the chair. There's a lot of moving parts. And so I talked with my family, and the decision was, and I talked with Sam, and the decision was made, first of all, that it made sense for me to put my name in the hat, because first of all, brothers deserve a choice, and second of all, there is no provision or really any answer in the code if no one has made themselves available or no one is available to fill that position after September 1st. Because our code requires that the Grand Secretary put in a statement of availability by September 1st in order to be considered. And so based on those discussions, I made myself available for that position, and was sort of shocked when I was elected a year ago to be the Grand Secretary. But I was honored, and it's been a lot of work and a lot of even though I worked here for over 2 years before I became Grand Secretary, there's been a lot of it's been a steep learning curve for me.
So is that if something were to happen, then of course we don't want that to happen, but if it did happen, would the Grand Master just appoint somebody essentially, or would it go to jurisprudence?
Essentially, that's the way I understand it. Is that somebody would? Well, actually, no, that's not the case. Now you're testing me. The code says the assistant Grand Secretary, if something were to happen to me, then Clayton Levine would move into that position. That's why you never see Clayton and I traveling together. And then he would fill out that term. Now, if something were to happen to me and nobody had made themselves available, I shouldn't speak for jurisprudence, but I'm assuming that they would say that there would be nominations made from the floor. But there's really no provision specifically that addresses that in the code that I'm aware of.
An assistant Grand Secretary, though, is appointed by the Grand Master?
No.
With recommendation from, or by the Grand Secretary then?
So the code says the Grand Secretary can appoint the assistant Grand Secretary.
Okay.
Now, obviously, I talked to the Grand Masters about who that would be, but that's one I guess perk of the job is that the Grand Secretary gets to choose who his assistant is going to be.
Cool.
So you mentioned travel a couple times. Do you get to? I know there's a annual conference of Grand Secretaries. Do you get to go to that? I presume, and is that your only travel, or do you travel all over the place all the time? Or?
Well, I have not traveled. The answer is, first of all, the Conference of Grand Masters is yes. So there is a Conference of Grand Masters, and at the same time, there's a Conference of Grand Secretaries that is held at the same time at the same location. Last year, we all go to all the fun places. Last year, it was in Rapid City, South Dakota, in the middle of February. It was a balmy. I think it got up to a balmy 16 degrees while we were there, and there were snowdrifts that were drifting inside the hotel, built up inside the doors. But no, that's the Conference of Grand Masters and Conference of Grand Secretaries is an opportunity for us to share and discuss things that are going on that are affecting all of the jurisdictions. So, but generally, the rest of my travels are within the state. This year I am going down to the Grand Lodge of California in October because I am on a committee. I was appointed on a committee for the Conference of Grand Masters and the Grand Secretary of California and the Grand Secretary for Idaho are going to be there so we can sit down and discuss, because one of the issues that we have that's coming up is the book. Should have it over here. The list of lodges that we all rely upon here, the publisher has indicated that they're not going to continue publishing that for very much longer.
Oh, wow.
And so, so there's some discussions about what we as all of the grand jurisdictions in the United States are going to do, and it's the Conference of Grand Secretaries for North America, actually. So it's not just us, but it's Canada as well. But what we're going to recommend going forward, are we going to take it over as a Conference of Grand Secretaries, or is there some other alternatives such as Amity or Grandview or some of the other things that are out there? So that's something that's going to affect all of the jurisdictions coming up that we're going to have to address here in the next few years.
So speaking of Conference Grand Masters, I know that's coming to Washington in a couple of years. Do you have a significant role in that as Grand Secretary and also Conference of Grand Secretaries? Yes. So
Conference of Grand Masters will be here in Washington in 2021. And so I am working with Jim Mendoza and his committee on the planning of that. There's several things that we have to plan, including getting all of the people from the airport to the hotel and back to the airport and to the various, there's a couple of tours that we are going to have for that. So I've been working with Jim Mendoza. We have we've contracted with a bus company to take the people to and from the airport to the hotel and everything. It will be down at the I just went blank on which hotel.
Weston, I think, isn't it?
Weston, thank you, in downtown Seattle. And we're also responsible, there's a welcome dinner that's on Saturday night, so we are responsible for hosting that. So we're working with the hotel on the menu and everything for that. Plus, we will have, for the Grand Masters, we will have a tour which will involve getting on the monorail and going to the Space Needle and those areas that are downtown. And right now it looks like the Grand Secretary's tour is going to be over at the Museum of Flight. But this is a great opportunity for the Masons of Washington. It's been many, many years since we've hosted a conference of Grand Masters. And so we are expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 to 800 people to come in for those events starting, I think it starts on February the 20th of 2021.
Nice. I know Most Worshipful Jim has been a regular guest on our show, and we appreciate his support and involvement. And I know he's looking for volunteers as well, as I understand. So definitely, if you're interested in learning more about Conference Grand Masters, we can certainly connect you with Most Worshipful Jim or his committee as well.
Absolutely, and we're starting to have monthly meetings to, because there are a lot of moving parts as far as getting people to and from concierge services, registration, because the Conference of Grand Masters does the registration, but we assist them because they don't have a lot of staff. So anybody that who would like to volunteer for that, and the nice thing is there's a lot of the meetings and a lot of the discussions that you can come in and sit in on and learn about some of the issues that are affecting lodges throughout the jurisdictions and throughout the world. We had last year at Conference of Grand Masters, we had the Grand Lodge of Bulgaria came in, and there's literally Grand Lodges from all over the world that come in.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming out today and being part of the show and answering some pointed questions and fun questions, and so we really appreciate that.
You bet. And if I can, for just a minute, I'd like to put in a plug for Grandview. Several years ago, we switched over to a new platform that does all of our membership and everything. They are. It was kind of a rough start because we were like the third or fourth grand jurisdiction that they had. And some of the items that we had asked them to do were kind of outside what they were, doing. They started out in Louisiana, and their code is totally different than ours. So they had some different terminology and everything. But they really come up to speed and everything on that, and they're really working hard to make themselves more user friendly for the lodges and the lodge secretaries to not only give them as much information, but also to be able to communicate within the lodges and for the Grand Lodge to communicate throughout the lodges. So I encourage everyone, even an entered apprentice can sign up for Grandview and get on and look at his Masonic record and see communications that go out to the entered apprentices and everything, and get information from the lodge. All you need is your last name, your membership number, and your home lodge number to put in, and you can register. It's that simple. And the email or the website for that is WA, as in Washington, .gv software, G as in George, V as in Victor, software.com. And if you click on member portal, it will take you and ask you to either sign in or register. If you haven't registered before, just click on the register button, and it'll ask you for those 3 pieces of information. It'll ask you to put in an email and a password, and you can do that. There's a couple of other kind of interesting things that I've talked with Grandview about doing for, because I think I was asked earlier about the secretaries and the jobs. I think before we started this recording. And one of my goals is to make the secretary's job easier, because back when I was secretary, back in the day when I was secretary, everything was paper, and it was a whole lot more difficult. And we want to make it simpler for the lodge secretaries, make it easier so that they're not having to spend as many hours doing all the work to keep the lodge afloat. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing is already a lot of the forms that the secretaries have to do are online and they're fillable. And some of the more common things that secretaries do, I think we started out the conversation, was they ask for dispensation to move their charter or for approval of certain things. We're going to try to make that where that can be online. They fill out the information, they submit it. It comes to me and to the Grand Master. He approves it. I draft a letter, and it goes back out to the lodge. It's that simple. And also for bylaws for the lodge, we talked about that earlier. There's a form. Unfortunately, there are many forms floating out there that a lot of the lodge secretaries have that are not the most up-to-date forms. So one of the things I do is when a bylaws change comes in, I have to check and make sure, is it on the right form that we're using now and everything. What I intend to do is have the bylaws on Grandview, where the lodge secretary just fills in the blanks, submits them. They go to bylaws for approval. They go to the Grand Master for signature, and we can send them back to the bylaws. So my goal is to make the lodge secretary make everything a whole lot simpler, and so that we can spend time doing the more important stuff of masonry, and so the mundane is the everyday stuff is simple and easy to do, and we don't have to waste our time on doing those things.
I will say, as a secretary who was trained by my predecessor on how to print out the forms and fill them out and mail them in, that Grandview is definitely a blessing for the secretaries. Is it perfect? No. Is it infinitely better than it used to be? Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it really is. And now the things that there were some big issues with Grandview. When I became the Grand Secretary, the first thing I did on Monday morning when I came into the office was I called the folks at Grandview and I said, look, there's some things that we've got to fix. And we got those things accomplished last year. We got the secretaries can now print out their own due statements, and they can customize those. Whereas it used to be the lodge had to order them. We had to charge the lodge for those items, and we spent weeks putting those together, and they were just here you owe this money, and there was nothing personalized or anything about them. So now the lodges can all print out their due statements and send those out. The second thing was end of year. When I was secretary, the Grand Lodge printed all the end of year out, sent them to the lodges. The secretary had to spend hours or days looking through there and making sure that everything was right and everything, and then sign off on them and send them back to Grand Lodge. Now you go on Grandview, you click on a button, you look at it, you say, yep, that's right, and you click and you hit accept, and you send in your 990s, and I think it's so much easier.
That sounds like it's much more streamlined.
Well, that's my intent, is to continue that streamlining.
We had talked a little bit in the very beginning when I was first on the show about our website and about software we have, and Stephen and Connor were a little jealous of our systems that we have here in Washington that apparently may not have in BC, or may not have yet anyway.
Well, the technology committee in BC is working on a new website. I'm surprised it's not been out and published and all that yet, but I know that their biggest worry was Trevor McEwen's database of educational material is all tied to our previous address, and so I think the delay and the reason why we don't have something really cool like yours is because they took a committee of this and added this many more, and now nothing gets done.
Well, I wish we could take credit for it, but Grandview is just a separate software system that's been plugged into it as a link, so it's not the website itself. I think they're talking about doing a revamp on the website too, but the Grandview, the back-end software for management, they're just they plugged it in, put a button on the website, and it now goes as Clint mentioned. I works for Clint. He said goes to that Washington.gv software, grandviewsoftware.com. It's a separate system that be bolted on. It's I remember going to Conference of Grandmasters when it was in Vancouver, matter of fact, and it was a great event. I really enjoyed that, and I looked at all the different softwares and talked to this Grand Secretary 2 Grand Secretaries ago. Said we really need this new cool software, and everybody was a little bit reluctant and not ready to do anything, and so I was really happy when the decision was made to go to Grandview. And now I applaud Clint for going out. I mean, I think you're coming locally here to Des Moines. Is it next week to do a training? And so I really enjoy those trainings, and I'll be there, of course, as a treasurer of my lodge. And again, even though I've been there once already, you always learn something new from those trainings. And
and so does the Grand Secretary. I learned something. And I learned some of the problems that the lodge secretaries are having, and so I try to, sometimes I just have to say I'm like I said, I'm sorry, that's what's in the code, and I can't fix that, but there's other things that I can fix, and we try to do that. You mentioned the website, and we've got Grandview, which, like you say, is its own standalone thing, but we also have our Grand Lodge website, freemason-wa.org, and I'm working with Right Worshipful Ed Woods, who's our new junior Grand Warden. Ed is very tech savvy and very especially computer savvy, and we are working on totally revamping the website. So I'm hoping by the beginning of next year, or certainly by Grand Lodge, we will have unveiled a totally new website that will be much more user-friendly. That's my goal. One of my goals this year is to get a new website done. So that's one of the other things. And also, with regards to the training, my plan is, as a matter of fact, I talked to Very Worshipful Clayton on Monday, and I said, Thursday we need to sit down and figure out where I'm going to go do the training around the state this year. I'm trying to get out and do 4 to 5 trainings in strategic places and get around to places that I wasn't last year. I've been doing training now on the temple board stuff and everything for about 5 years. Obviously now I'm doing the secretary training as well. So I'm trying to get around strategically where it makes it easy for brethren to get to the trainings, but I'm not having to travel on weekends that I'm not traveling with the Grand Master. I'm trying to schedule it when I'm in the area, so that I'm not making a trip over to Eastern Washington one weekend with the Grand Master and the next weekend to do the training. But that's another thing. I'm going to try to schedule 4 to 5 trainings throughout the year, again for the secretary, treasurer, and temple corporation training. And that's another thing. I heard a lot of brothers say, well, this Grandview is great, but we need kind of hands-on training. So the training that I'm doing, I'm picking spots that one of the requirements for the spots that I pick is they have to have Wi-Fi, because I want brothers to bring their own computers, and I will walk them through. We will go through Grandview, and so that they can. I'm the type of person that I learn by doing, and I think a lot of folks are like that. And so that they can go through and see exactly step by step, how do I put in a new candidate? How do I do my dues statements? How do I credit somebody when they pay their dues? How do I send out messages to the lodges? And those are all things that you can do with Grandview. They've also rolled out a new app for your phone I haven't sent that information out to the brethren yet because I'm still playing with it. It's literally brand new. It's been in the last week, but it looks really promising as well. Where you can just you have an app and you can go on and get information and communicate through Grandview on the app.
Well, that'd be great. Well, I think we've reached the end of our allotted time. Stephen, do you have anything else that you want? Any other issues you'd like us to address, or?
Not from my end. I think he's got pretty big job actually. I guess you got to be retired to do that job, eh? Being it's sounding pretty full time, but I like what you guys are implementing, and I wish you all the success in implementing the training, because that's really the key component. Because if it's there and nobody knows how to use it, it probably won't get used. So the training is going to be awesome part of it, I'm sure.
David, do you have anything else you'd like to contribute?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm hoping that we can eventually have the Grand Secretary of BC and Yukon on as well. So that's a shout out or a call out to a challenge, if you will, to them. And so hopefully we can maybe we can work with the Grandmaster. We had him on recently, and so we could always work with Connor and Stephen and Grandmaster of BC and Yukon to try to get them on. It'd be fun to see the differences and contrast the two different jobs and roles and all that. But no, again, thank you, Right Worshipful, for being on the show, and it's always fun to work with you in these capacities as well as regular jurisdictional stuff too. So.
Well, thank you guys thank you very much for having me. And like I said, I'm here. I answer the phones. I have an open door policy. So if anybody ever has any questions or anything that they need, I tell my staff we're here to serve the brethren, and that's the way I look at it. And we're here to help. And so please feel free to contact me either by email, phone, or come see me in person in my office.
Well, again, thank you on behalf of myself and David and Stephen and the unfortunately absent Connor. Thank you very much, Right Worshipful Brother Clint, for coming out on our show today. And thank you all for listening to us on the Working Tools Masonic Podcast.